For weeks now, fuel crisis continues to be controversial in Sierra Leone. Within 3 weeks, the petroleum product prices have increased by 50%. On Monday, 28th February this year, the Petroleum Regulatory Agency in a statement said effective 1st March, the pump price of petroleum products will be increased from 10 to 12,000 leones. That change seriously affected the transportation system in the country and commodities. Even though there were rumors that the country has enough petroleum products, during and after the pronouncement of the increment, people allegedly, as many would say, but with facts, people were seen in queues, vehicles were stranded owing to the fact that stations and dealers were not selling petroleum products. Now, due to the recent increase of from 12 to 15,000 leones, many have questioned the government and why the increase in the price of petroleum products. So tonight, we are set to look at the effects of the increase and its corresponding effects across other sectors. My name is Samuel Wise Bangura, and this is AYV on Sunday. Right, good evening and a very warm welcome to AYV on Sunday on Channel 43 on TV and on Radio FM 101.7. Now today we're discussing the fuel price increase and its spillover effect. And this evening I have with me in the studio lawyer Augustine Soyusengbe-Mara, a good governance and democracy advocate. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, listeners and viewers.
All right. I have Valnora Edwin, another good governance and democracy campaigner. Good evening, Valnora, and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
All right, I have a strategic communicator from the Ministry of Information and Communication, Imran Sila. Good evening and welcome to the show, Imran.
Good evening. Thank you.
All right, from the National Publicity wing of the Oppositional People's Congress Party, I have Minkailu Kuruma. Minkailu, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Samuel. Grateful to be here.
Right, and to you watching and listening, remember, as always, you can be part of the conversation. Just move over to our AYV Sierra Leone Facebook page. Drop your comments, drop your questions. We'll find time to go through some of them. The AYV Sierra Leone Facebook page, please. Let me start off with you, lawyer Mara. I mean, for obvious reasons, I've seen a video of you calling for a Green Monday protest. And because the fuel price has been increased, hardship, and a whole lot of other things. You think, it's time for Sierra Leoneans to speak up, and the best way to do so is to be in green on Monday. Now, given the things highlighted in that video, what does this mean for a nation like Sierra Leone at this point?
I think, Samuel, I think it's almost lamentable that year in, year out, would have conversations around increase in fuel products. We imagine a country where in 2-3 years, some of us would be put out of business. Valnora and myself would have no other business to do other than perhaps looking after our family, right? But it's very sad that year in, year out, we're engaged on these issues, these social issues. And I'm not new to this. 2016, 2017, when fuel prices shot up from about 3,500 to about 6,000, we staged what we call the Black Monday. It was in direct protest against the hike in fuel prices, right, and also the corresponding increase in, just the basic commodities. But once you have fuel prices go up, even your rent would go up, transportation inevitably would go up, and all those your basic ingredients for a decent meal that you would have, and the poverty, would just continue to deepen. So, when we experience the increase from 10,000 to 12,000, and before within the shake of an eyelash, it shot up to 15,000 leons. And the conditions continue in terms of the social conditions of Sierra Leoneans. It's not that the purchasing power has increased overnight. No. It's the same salary, the same meager salary that Sierra Leoneans, majority of Sierra Leoneans do take home. So it's sad that we have leadership that does not prepare really well. In 2018, when the SLPP government put together their New Direction People's Manifesto, they knew that fuel increase is an enduring problem, right? They ought to have put measures in place whereby whenever there's a global event, such as what we're experiencing now, there's sufficient domestic cushioning measures. But sadly, it seems as if leadership, one regime after another, they are caught pants down. And that is why I think, I mean, come to your question about green, I mean, I've said in that video that green is a national color.
Right.
I don't belong to any political party. I've never belonged to any political party. I believe that green is a national color for my flag. And I believe that the people of Sierra Leone have been forced to go green, to adopt natural means now. You know, if there's no fuel, I sent my driver yesterday for 40 liters. They could only sell to him 25 liters, right? So many people have resorted to trekking, so natural means. Many people who were refrigerating their food products are now leaving their food products outside. So we have been forced to go green. That's the significance of green. You know, apart from the fact that green is a national color, the third significance of green is a satire. I'm a satirist, so I use satire from time to time to say, this is a regime, it's a green regime. We're using green. You know, this is not a call for anybody to assemble anywhere. It's not a call for gathering. You can don your green and go about your normal business. It could be a green bracelet, it could be a green scarf, could be a green pants or whatever it is. Just go about your normal business, put on green to register your disappointment that this regime promised us heavens. It's what we've been delivered is the highway to hell.
Before I take you to the corresponding effects of the fuel crisis, let me ask about, you spoke about the measures. I mean, measures were not in place. I mean, we were not prepared as a nation for issues like this. Many have advanced arguments that, for example, the price per barrel was at $70. Now it's at $119, which means, I mean, it's a global crisis. So the global crisis, should we bring it home that our government should have put plans in place to, to have cushioned the effects we go through right now?
Correct. Absolutely. I mean, it's not a novel problem that we're facing. I mean, in 2016, 2017, we've experienced these problems far too often, right? One of the measures that folks who are experts in this field have said time and time again, we should have sufficient product in town. So when there's a global event, for example, that shakes the prices internationally, that would not affect us, because once those products have been purchased and they're in town, preserved in town, it will take probably a couple of months before the new prices would have a knock-on effect on the product, right? So once you have sufficient storage of product, once you can, right? I mean, it's not every day that these prices do change, I mean, internationally, right? So once you can cushion that effect by providing adequate products within town, and then also considering other measures such as subsidies, for example. Right? They cannot be permanent, but on an ad hoc basis, once there's a significant shoot in prices globally, you also consider introducing some form of subsidy back home, so that would alleviate the burden that the prices would ordinarily place on ordinary citizens. These measures have not been spoken about. What the government has done is simply to increase prices and leave the common Sierra Leonean to the mercy of poverty.
All right. Valora, let me hear from you. I mean, sorry, were were you caught in that web of fuel drought?
I was. And I'm caught. I don't know if my vehicle would be able to get back to pick me up. So I'll start asking some of my colleagues to give me a ride home.
All right. I mean, what did that present, that crisis or this crisis?
I think it was rather disappointing. And I do associate what my colleague has mentioned. I associate myself with his views. I think if we're saying we're building a resilient economy and looking at the manifesto, which I have here, that we're working towards 2035 becoming a green middle-income economy. At this rate, I think we should be aiming for 2070, not 2035. Because I'm not an economist, but I believe that successive governments, there should be firstly building blocks, so that we have a strong economy, because anything could happen. We had Ebola, natural disasters, COVID, and all of that. So there should be measures in place for these externalities, these shocks that would come in. That's where what I understand having a resilient economy would imply, that you would put measures in place. So when these external shocks come in, as a government, you'll be able to cushion the effect. But then it shows how, and obviously it shows how weak the economy is and the value of our currency as soon as within 2 weeks or 3 weeks when the conflict started, it's skyrocketing. And the most unfortunate thing is this argument or this explanation or excuse we give about, in the region, in fact, we are paying the lowest in taxes and we have the lowest fuel rate. But we forget to mention that Sierra Leone is among the least developed countries, the 10 least developed countries. We forget that our disposable income is among the lowest in the world. We forget that most of the analysis being done, whether it's on health, not that we're not doing anything, really. Efforts are being made, successive governments, legislation, and all of that. But when you do the assessment, whether it's on health, it's on education, or it's in the economy, we're always in the bottom billion. So making that comparison, I think it's a bit unfair and it's unrealistic. I think it's about time we realize that there's something we need to do. And for me, the question is not the effect. The question is the cause. We need to start examining why, as he mentioned, 2016, 2017, we had the same issue. Why over the years successive governments have failed to ensure that they have that cushion effect for these externalities and this shock, because that's what life is all about. You will face shocks. There will be Ebola, there will be flooding, there will be some disaster, something would happen. But you should prepare for that. And I want to go to what the SLPP manifesto stated when it spoke about financial challenges. I'm not going to there because I'm not an economist, so I don't get caught somewhere. It spoke about revenue mobilization, public expenditure management, public debt management, exchange rate management, developing the private sector, and developing the infrastructure. And if we're having this conversation now about the effects the fuel increment has caused, it shows that all these issues, though some steps have been made, but we need to go back and re-examine where we've missed something. And if we're hoping to be a middle-income economy and we are still taking these baby steps, it's going to be a while before Sierra Leone gets to that place it's supposed to be. And the other reason why we raise this concern, this is a country that is rich. You know, sometimes
we're not poor?
we are not a poor country.
Our politicians say we're a poor country.
We have all these mineral resources, but you know, there is this gap, and that's the gap, that's the cause. If we have all these mineral resources, we have all this arable land, we have tourism. I mean, we've been given everything. The gap to get us to be a rich country, that's the middle section, and that's why we're having this conversation. And that's why government officials need to tell us what's the challenge there. Why can't we move from this point to this point? We have all, it's like you need to cook. You have all the ingredients, but at the end of it all, you've only boiled water. And it means you need to put all the ingredients to have whatever it is you prepare, whether it's cake, whether it's soup, whether it's whatever. So what's the missing link?
So let me ask you this question. You just, cited or referenced some parts of the SLPP's manifesto. You know, the party campaigned on the platform of managing the state and its resources effectively and efficiently. And so if you're saying, looking at the economic, the fiscal and monetary policies that we've put in place as a nation, taking baby steps, 4 years down the line, have we really gotten to a point where I would say, at least we've made some gains. Those gains are now helping us to perhaps look at the current realities of the fuel crisis, for example, which got compounded by the power outages across the country.
Exactly.
So where are we with that particular platform of effective and efficient management of the state and its resources?
So as I've always said on this platform, there are always 3 stages. You have the strategic point, which we've made. There are policies, we've signed agreements, we've maybe expanded on certain infrastructure, we've created offices, we have projects to deal with all of that. There comes the operationalization of that, which is where do you focus, the manpower and all of that. Sometimes we're a bit lost. Not all of us are aware of what happens in those sections. But I am sure 95% of Sierra Leoneans, they just want to drive into a fuel station and buy their fuel at reasonable cost. We know there are issues, so we think 3-4 months down the line, something would happen. Energy, we've been on that for years on end, and there doesn't seem to be a solution. So at the implementation stage, there is a problem. And I think that's where we have the gap of where you have the ingredients and you need to prepare. So we don't know when we need to put the pepper, when we need to put the palm oil, when we need to put the fish. How do you mix all of them together? How long they are supposed to boil or steam? Whether it's boiling, whether it's steaming. I think that's the area we're having a problem. And that's what we need to fix and have a frank discussion about.
You know, when Lawyer Mara said, he sent his driver to get 40 liters of, I don't know if it's petrol. That's at 600,000 units.
Yes.
Exactly. Clearly. And that's a monthly salary for many Sierra Leoneans. For those who are even honoring the minimum wage proclamation of government. Minkailu, the fuel crisis. I can only imagine you've got a car. I don't know if you're buying 40 liters too. I would want to ask for some for 600,000 units. But where does that put, at this point, productivity and livelihood for many?
Samuel, it's unbearable for the ordinary Sierra Leonean. You see, I want to maybe check or double check, if not cross check, my records. I heard you saying the barrel of fuel is about 126 or
19.
119. But I did check on Thursday, and I can refer you to Bloomberg, to OPEC, to Brent. You can check. On Thursday, it's dropped from $100 per barrel to $92 per barrel. Okay. So that tells you if government was actually serious in the maximization of the welfare of the people, that in itself, could be a yardstick for government to see how they can renegotiate the price of fuel. But government is actually not demonstrating that kind of empathy, and the people are suffering. When fuel prices increase, basic commodities will also have problems. The ordinary man will suffer, and the final consumer will bear the burden. That is the situation we are currently in. It boils down to government expenditure. That is the bottom line. We must not shy away from saying it. Government is running a bloated budget. And because the budget is bloated and most of the money is going to wages and salaries, government cannot support other areas that they are supposed to.
In terms of subsidizing?
Like subsidizing fuel. The focus here is on fuel.
Right.
Government alone is spending about 58% of its budget on wages and salaries. I am not talking about what is being put on black and white. I listened to the finance minister who read a budget of about 10 trillion. Yeah? Government is spending huge money on international travel, especially presidential travel. About 8% of that money is being spent on that. In 2015, in 2018 to 2019, as a country, we spent about $15 or so million on international trip alone. When President Kaba was president and Ernest Bai Koroma, annually, none of them did exceed $1 million in terms of international travel. So all of this is piling serious pressure on government earning. Government is spending, well, I am avoiding to say recklessly, but let me borrow the word of President Bio, like a drunken sailor. Government is spending like a drunken sailor, and that is a fact. And that is what is affecting the country.
So let me ask this question quickly.
I am here to conclude, please.
I'm the moderator, but go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
We are also witnessing a situation in which government has spent huge money in redenomination. And nobody is asking the question, what is the cost of redenomination? We are spending a whopping sum of 30 million pounds sterling to print new currency. And we are spending trillions of leones to destroy the old currency. All of that money, when put together, will actually augment government to address these areas. These are welfare areas. They are very important for government to focus on. We have many things to discuss when it comes to what is really creating the problem.
Do you think,
now,
let me quickly ask you this question. Do you think government would not want to really subsidize the issue of fuel?
Government is not interested in the welfare of the people. I tell you, in 2008, the barrel of fuel, there was a global financial crisis. The barrel of fuel was almost running up to $200 per barrel, almost. But fuel price did not go above 6,000 yuans. We were able to subsidize to ensure that the welfare of the people is being guaranteed. That is what is expected of government. Yeah. Now, we are not significant. Yeah. We are not key players when it comes to oil.
Right.
In fact, we are not purchasing crude oil. We are purchasing a refined product.
Yeah. So
that we must know. And if we are going to be affected by the war in Russia versus Ukraine, that will not happen effective immediately. We are going to be affected as an impact of the second wave of that particular war. We have petroleum products in this country before that particular crisis. And then dealers went ahead to increase prices of fuel without considering the fact that the people are actually going to be the ones that will bear the burden. So that in itself is a very serious problem. So government has the responsibility to look into the sufferings of the people and renegotiate the prices of fuel, just so that we can move on as a country.
All right, Imran, let me bring you now in. I mean, you seem to be the only defender here tonight. But I mean, with the submissions from the three panelists, it appears government literally has the responsibility now to see whether or not this situation can absorb an urgent intervention from your wing to get it salvaged. I mean, if at all you're interested, or you, I mean, if we're to go by Minkailu, government is, you're not interested in the welfare of the people.
Thank you very much. Samuel, I've listened to Mara, Valnora, and Minkailu, and I sort of get a few issues.
Go ahead.
Number one, I think Mara is talking about storage capacity. You know?
Right.
I mean, I don't know how much we all know about the current storage capacity, and it has been there for decades. It's about 6 weeks. So even when we talk, say, petrol dinners alone, it only lasts for 6 weeks, sadly enough. Yeah? And to Valnora's point, you would want to go back and question other governments in the past, and what did they do to expand the storage capacity. So that is one of the things we're concerned about as a government, yeah? And that is something we have worked on. I'll come to that in a bit. But let me just, I mean, the SLPP manifesto talked about resilience, fiscal discipline, and all the rest of it, financial management. And I think, and to tie it to what Minkailu was saying about bloated wage bill.
Right.
Now, I keep arguing, and somehow no one has been able to convince me yet.
How?
Has someone done a breakdown of this so-called wage bill, or is it just an easy thing to latch onto and begin to talk about wage bill? What is the disparity between those who are political appointees and those who are civil servants who year in, year out are on the wage bill? And since the start of this administration in April of 2018, thousands more have been added onto it because of the aims and aspirations of this government and the direction we want to take this country to on healthcare, on education. University lecturers have been added onto the wage bill. Before then, I think they were being left to the universities themselves to pay their lecturers. But there are a lot of issues, and so we added them onto the wage bill. That surely would mean, naturally, and I didn't pass maths at school. I failed it, I had a 9. But simple mathematics would tell you, right, that if you add those thousands onto the wage bill, naturally, the wage bill will go up. That's common sense. So, except if I hear with data and statistics to support that this so-called bloated wage bill that they keep referring to has something to do with specifically political appointees by this administration, then I mean, I think it's a non-position for me.
So I've had arguments from, opposition politicians, for example, with regards to that. Say, for example, there are new ministries, created, some separated. And the arguments they've advanced is that the salaries of these new ministers alone can actually pay, say, 30 or 40 teachers. So necessarily for them, it's not about the civil servant, the teachers, the nurses, the doctors, the lecturers, or the 25% salary increment for the security people, be it police, be it military. But these, new institutions, new ministries, ministers, deputies, and setting up their offices, getting an office space, for them, that's huge, and that's the burden on the wages and salaries. If we're to go with that.
Well, Samuel, we need to also inject a bit of history into this conversation. I went back, but that was when we started hearing this talk, particularly from critics and opposition, about, then they had new ministries and all the rest of it and all the implications to it. And I went back to the early days at independence. How many ministries did we have, right? Over time, since independence, how many more ministries have we not added from one government to the other, simply because the aims and aspirations of the government in 1967 was completely different to the aims and aspirations of a government in 1987, and completely different to a government in the 90s. And so, you would realize that over time, successive governments has found the need to add ministries or split ministries. I hope you understand. So go back to President Ahmed Tijan Kaba, the late man. There was the Ministry of Youth and Sports, right? In the next administration, Youth and Sports was separated. It was the Ministry of Youth and then the Ministry of Sports. Environmental issues became trendy at some point. Yeah? We only had EPA. And then His Excellency the President, in his wisdom, said, look, someone should be sitting around the cabinet table to talk about environmental issues, and hence the need to have a Ministry of the Environment. Right. Now, look, it's about the aims and aspirations of every government. That is why people vote for a government, and they expect those governments to take this decision. Yes, I can understand we can continue to have this debate every now and then about the need to add new ministries and why the need to add a ministry at all. But look, once a government, His Excellency the President, has a mandate, right, he will be judged on the basis of what he does over a period of 5 years. And we're not too far from an election anyway. One of the things I think we would also like to inject in this conversation, right, should be, what are the alternatives? We keep talking about fuel prices going up in Sierra Leone. It is as if we're in a bubble, right? And Salon are the only country where we're seeing for the first 10 shocks there. I just checked the price of Brent oil. It's 108 and not 70-something as someone was suggesting. No, it's 108. I just checked it whilst you were talking. Okay, fine. So there are different sources. But on average, fact of the matter is, it is not what it used to be before COVID. And here's the point for me. And this is one of the reasons why we have, over the past few days, covered 41 radio stations across the country to be able to explain to people exactly what things are. There was an SLPP manifesto which talked on several things, right? But then those who put the manifesto together were not sorcerers. Right? No one predicted that Russia and Ukraine being for defeat at this point in time. No one predicted COVID. Fact of the matter is, if you have a storage capacity lasting 6 weeks, right, and you have to import fuel into your country, we don't produce oil. You might think it's a non-argument, but let me finish my point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and we have to import every 6 weeks. Whatever external shocks there are naturally affects us, right? So what do you do in the medium to long term? Because in the immediate term, you can only play, right, by the situation that exists. In the medium to long term, what do you do? Any responsible government, number one, should be thinking about bringing more players, right, into the petrol sector.
Right.
Yeah? Make sure we have other people who can come in and invest. And this is what we have done.
Is that being done?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. There's APP, the oil petroleum product. Last year at some point, I think it was around June, July, I accompanied His Excellency the Vice President to the Kisi terminal just to check up and see exactly what they were doing and how advanced they were, I mean, with the work they were doing. And hopefully that also includes, from my understanding, having fuel stations, outlets, basically. They were about 70 to 80% done, and they did say that by October, they would begin operations full time. That didn't happen. And it's only in the past few weeks that we know for sure that they have done the first shipment of petroleum product into the country. Now, that's good news. What that means is, number one, it means we now have more storage, more fuel that is hopefully going to last beyond 6 weeks. I think the objective of this government is to make sure we bring in additional players. Because in the past, we have only been reduced to just 1, 2 major players, right, in the petrol sector. And this is what we have lived with for decades.
And they've monopolized the market over time. That's what you're saying.
Well, you don't need me to say that.
Okay, so
that's a natural conclusion.
Let me ask a question. Let me ask a question around what Mara submitted earlier, just quickly before Mara, can come in. He mentioned the issue of storage, which you've made submission to.
Yeah.
The issue of subsidy. Yeah. Now, he mentioned that for every economy that enjoys, a boom, there's always a time for a bust.
Yeah.
But you have to put measures in place, for when that economy, experiences a bust. Yeah. But that is lacking in Sierra Leone. He said over time, especially when we do not produce it. So when we're enjoying an economic boom, we should have put in place some measures for a bust, and we can always cushion effects. And in a situation like this, we're not expecting the war like you mentioned, but if there were plans, then as a nation, we should have been able to jump in and just get things going.
So look, I think subsidy, I don't think Minkailo in 5 knows whether this government is subsidizing or not, or he seems to think that we're not subsidizing. So the recent figures are 240 billion in terms of subsidy. And that has been happening since COVID, full stop. If we hadn't been subsidizing as a government since the inception of COVID, we would have been in a lot worse situation than we are right now. That's the fact of the matter. And this government will continue to take those deliberate, right, immediate steps to make sure, right, that things don't go overboard. We understand these are challenging times, right? When it comes to the price of fuel, right across the world, and this is also affecting Western countries. Just yesterday, a friend was sent me a video. I think it was in Virginia or some other state. The cheapest fuel that they had there was $3.99.
Now I know this guys.
We don't want to hear that, definitely.
So of course, you give us Virginia hospitals, for example. Give us Virginia malls.
That's your opinion, and you're entitled to it.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
But to me, the bottom line is, and the underlying factor, every single nation in the world is the fact that against the resources that they have to spend a bit more now on fuel. Full stop. Right? And it's the same, whether it's developing, middle income, or not, poor countries. They have to spend a bit more now on fuel. And that is because we are faced with a global situation. Russia was sending in 30% of crude oil to the world.
To the world, right.
That is not available anymore. In part because of the war, but then also because of sanctions on Russia. Now, I was asked an interesting question on SLBC.
Quickly.
When will that end? When will things return back to normal? And I said, your guess might be as good as mine. In a sense, number one, I don't know when the war is going to finish. Number one. Second, I don't effectively know when the sanctions are going to be lifted. So if 30% of Russia's oil, right, is not going to the world market, then definitely there's going to be a challenge. What that means, simple economics. It means the supply side of crude oil that is now being changed into various petroleum products is way low and demand continues.
All right.
So naturally, there's a
Let me bring in Mara quickly. I mean, he talked about Russia. Take, for example, a friend of mine told me that he went to get a gas cooker, something that he used to get for 150,000 yuans. I think he got it for 450,000 yuans.
Yeah.
And for him, that was as a result of, I mean, cooking gas comes from Russia. And so he just mentioned the issue of sanction and all of that. And so all of, I mean, those supplies have been cut off. Irrespective of the fact that we are on the receiving end always, I mean, as a nation, what should be done? And I know you would want to also take a bite on some of the things Imran submitted. So go ahead.
No, I think two things. I mean, fundamentally for me, I think it's really a tad sad that we'll sit here and then have folks from government who join us in lamenting the problems. You know, I would have loved Imran telling us about what has been done as opposed to what should be done, what is going to be done, and the fourth tier of governance, right? Yes, Vanilla spoke about resilient economy, right? Shows clearly that we still do have a very, very weak economy. Because once the Russia, for example, sneezes, we're catching pneumonia, for example, right? So it shows the lack of preparedness for these global shocks. It's not like somebody drafted a new direction manifesto and did not contemplate that there will be pandemic or epidemic or some whatever it is, right? There's always a contemplation in governance that things would go bad, right? That the best of economy would suffer a burst, like you said. How prepared are we to ensure that we cushion the effect, right? Obviously, when there's a boom, we did experience there was a reduction, was the first time reduction in fuel to 7,000. And it was like that appetite was significantly altered. From 7,000, we're spiraling out of control. Right? Again, it comes down to how prepared are we. He spoke about this 6-week storage. It's been the same story since Abraham was being called by God, since the Pope was an altar boy. It's been the same story. Tell us now the 6-week storage has been transformed to 6-month storage. We would not in agreement, would know that this new direction governance system has significantly altered governance in terms of preparedness. So when there's a crisis, and these crises don't linger for significant amount of time, really. There's usually international effort in, putting measures in place, to address them. So once we have these products coming for a significant amount of time, when these global shocks do occur, there's always that buffer, there's always that protection. But we sit here 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we lamented fuel increase. I'm sitting here done in a green in protest. And all we hear from government is, what is going to be done? We visited ferry terminal, and steps have been put in place in the fourth year, for goodness sake.
So he just mentioned that, of course, the APP, for example, has assured them, or in fact, I think they've done their first shipments and started to collect them.
I'm not. It's not that I don't believe Mr. Silla, right? Yes, I mean, obviously we've had these stories. We've had these stories over. It was the same thing that APC government told us. Give us some time. It's not like Rome was built in a day. It's not 4 months. We're talking about 4 years. It's not that when they came into office, they suddenly discovered these problems. They knew, they sat somewhere, wrote a very beautiful manifesto, new direction, they call it the People's Manifesto, and they're rolling out plans in the fourth year. and telling us, oh, it's not built overnight. No, that's not the argument. What should be the argument is we're rolling now from 6 months to a year in terms of providing this protection for Sierra Leone. In terms of subsidies, nothing has been said.
240, I said. You didn't listen.
Towards petroleum?
You didn't listen.
No, I did. Towards petroleum?
That's what he said from COVID.
Towards petroleum?
Since COVID, 240 billion.
No, I'm challenging that. I'm challenging that. Mr. Silaka, I think I got it wrong. Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm challenging that. Because there's nothing that would, if these subsidies are in place, and once there is a significant global hike in prices, there should be a corresponding increase in subsidies if these subsidies do exist. You know, I'm not casting aspersions on what you said. It could be correct, right? But I'm saying that the subsidies, whatever the subsidies are not sufficient, right? I am not a pro-subsidy person.
So
Don't get me wrong.
have you shifted position from not having subsidies to subsidies?
And
you're
no,
claiming
you have
now
informed
that,
us, and I don't have any reason to
because you've not been doing due diligence.
No, I don't have any
been.
reason to disbelieve you, right? But the point I'm making, Samuel, before you butt in, is the fact that once you have a significant hike in these prices, there should be a corresponding increase in subsidies so that the effect is not as gargantuan.
So as you talk about subsidies and us having 240 billion,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, a subsidy to
fuel,
yes. It brings to the fore the issue of us being controlled financially by these international institutions, because there was this, crisis or demand, or should I say instruction, because I would not want to say conditionalities from IMF and other international bodies, that the government should remove subsidies and all of that. So we've gone back to subsidizing the sector?
So look, here's the thing. I think if you check the records, right, subsidies have been implemented by this government since the start of COVID, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Yeah? What I am giving you and the public, right, is the most recent amount, which is 240
All towards
billion.
fuel.
This is something you're free to go and check.
Right.
We have talked about fuel increases or being decreased for the few times it has come down, and we have always mentioned subsidies. So you just need to pluck one of those interviews we've done over the past, in the past, right, to get exactly what we have said in relation to subsidies. So I'm not just saying it for the first time, or someone from the strategic communications, whether it be me or someone else, or the minister or the deputy minister. This is not the first time we're saying it. We've been talking about subsidies since the start of COVID, because it's an essential part of this whole fuel conversation, number one. Second, when we introduced during COVID the Quick Action Economic Response Program, by then Jacob Jesus Safa was the Minister of Finance before he was moved to the Chief Minister's office. One of the things we said we were going to do was to make sure that essential commodities were available, right, even during trying times, because we know that COVID had its own implications. One, with regards to the supply chain, the price of commodities, right, to get them from Turkey and China and other places, what they were, just the unit cost, right, but then also the shipment cost, and even that was not guaranteed. So we're just turning the corner on COVID. Nations are beginning to stabilize, in a sense, probably learning to live with COVID as the new reality going forward. And then we have, right, a further challenge in the Russia-Ukraine crisis. So for me, that's a double whammy for every single economy around the world. And look, what we can do, what we have been doing. I've mentioned our steps in making sure that we expand the storage capacity, right? That requires billions of dollars, right, by private people to come in and invest, which is what APP has done. They've invested billions of dollars. That is why their first shipment has come in.
Is it possible, Imran, for government to manage its own storage facilities? Because I'm aware that the current storage facility is owned by government but leased to the private people. Let them run it, let them take it.
So I'm aware that part of the conversations that government had with APP was for us to get a storage expansion, right? So if the first shipment has come in, it is more than likely the case that that storage
expansion
capacity, has been increased.
Okay.
Now, ultimately, I do agree, right, with Mara and Valnora. I think if we are able to stabilize in a sense, have a storage capacity say of about 6 months, right? And that's not going to happen overnight. I'd rather come and say the truth here than come and begin to misinform the public and say, oh, we did get storage capacity over the last 6 months tomorrow. Because that is not what my president wants me to do.
Right.
And that is not what my minister wants me to do. Let me finish in 30
Quickly.
seconds. I'll want to come here and say the correct things and the right things. I know the people of this country, right, understand exactly what is happening. They understand the dynamics. We can have this conversation from now till midnight. They would run to their own conclusion because they watch global events and they understand it is impacting this country. Bottom line is, are we doing the right things in making sure that we expand on our storage capacity? Absolutely. Have we been subsidizing in the immediate now to make sure fuel price does not go beyond 15,000? Initially, the conversation was for it to be 18,000
right.
by the oil dealers. That was what they wanted it to be. But we have said, no, it cannot get to 18,000 leons. And that is because
let me bring in
we understand
Valnora.
Exactly what the implications
Emma, let me
are
bring in,
and what those implications
let me bring in Valnora. You know, as you continue to struggle to get fuel,
All of us.
okay.
He's going to get me fuel. They've expanded
All
it.
of
I mean, you the car owners are struggling. You the car owners are struggling to get fuel. Let me put it that way. I mean, but it goes back to last Sunday. I mean, I was coming from the peninsula, just trying to observe the fuel situation. And I mean, NP, for example, put out a statement that, oh no, we have enough fuel, our stations are our outlets are open and you can go and get. But I noticed from peninsula, no NP station was actually, no outlet of NP was selling. PRA, the Petroleum Regulatory Agency, came out with a statement, we have enough fuel, but still up to today we continue to struggle, to get fuel. And if we are to take the effect of, whether it's the non-availability, it's the, hoarding of fuel, I don't know what category to actually put it. If we are to take that, is it a few months ago, the bakers, bread bakers, were protesting that, oh, they need to increase their price. And now fuel, it's actually fuel in that price hike in bread. And that's not to talk about other commodities already. So in all of these, where do we draw the line between understanding the realities and government coming in to see the situation of the ordinary Sierra Leoneans and see what can be done at this crucial period?
You know, these are the questions I like because, as I've mentioned, 95% of Sierra Leoneans is not interested in APP or expansion or storage or these things we like talking about. Their focus is a government is in office. They have said this is what they want to do. And what do we call them? Mama government or Papa government? And in the ideal world, so you will say there might be an argument, well, it's not ideal. But you expect your parents to be there to be that backup for you in times of challenges. And that's what we're saying. If they are Mama government or Papa government, if we're having these external shocks, we need to have put measures in place. Even as NGOs, when we write projects, you have risk and assumption, which means you have to put certain measures in place in case there are challenges with your implementation. So the same thing happens. We've had Ebola, we've had a war, we've had so many things. So many things could happen. So there should have been measures in place to ensure that the government steps into cushion. I know the issue around fuel has been a long battle between the government and the donors or IMF.
Right.
And I think I might say I'm even pleased to hear and surprised to hear that since COVID, the government had been subsidizing.
Right.
Because, again, I think we are not managing our resources well. We have to depend on external people. They have to give us certain conditions that sometimes do not work. Because since we've been depending on the IMF, where have we been? We are still depending. And I find it so concerning when you hear people being delighted about receiving, oh, we've gone through, we've shown fiscal resilience, we've obeyed all their plans and the instructions and the guidelines, and so they're going to give us more funding. And I think, oh dear, you really don't understand what's going on. We should not be having that, and it comes back to what I mentioned, because, and that's where a good number of Sierra Leoneans are coming from as well. Because we have all these resources, why do we need to depend on donors so heavily that they have to dictate what we need to do. And that's one of the issues that are affecting us today. But going further, I think what is most important about government, and I think that's what we want to hear, because I keep on thinking, if this war goes on for the next 3 months, are we going to be buying fuel 30,000 leons or 40,000 leons? So what are measures that the government is now putting in place, maybe better late than never, now putting in place to ensure that they cushion the effect? Because you go to the market on a normal day without any fuel issue, you go to the market or the shops this week, they have a particular price.
Right.
You go the following week, it's like 10,000, 15,000 added without any fuel or any issue. So you keep on thinking, how can the ordinary person survive? Even Gary, Bolgo. I was speaking with someone because he had some medicine, and I was saying, you need to eat, the security I have, you need to eat a more balanced meal. And he said, oh, I bought corn flour, but then now it's so expensive. Now it's 80,000. So now, if it's 80,000 at this point in time, and look at what we're experiencing now. So in the next few weeks, it's going to be like 100,000. And people, like you rightly said, if they're earning 600,000, you buy 40. Is it 40 now? 40
yeah,
liters.
40 liters. It's
600,000. I mean, and income has not increased in any manner, shape, or form. In fact, the taxes have increased. The utility bills, without our knowledge. You know, you look at your data, the electricity. In fact, we don't have water supply. It comes once a week and stuff like that. The internet provider, and they're not at their optimal. So things are really challenging. And I think that's the question we are asking. What is government doing to ensure that that ordinary Sierra Leonean can survive? I mean, even it's affecting everybody, but that ordinary Sierra Leonean, and our poverty level is very high. So you can start imagining what those who are earning even less than 600,000, how do they survive? They'll tell you transportation from point A to point B. It's difficult. I was in town a few weeks ago, and you have this lady selling all the, it was at the time they had the shops closed because of the tax, buckets and all these plastic household items. And out of care, I was saying to her, you know, how much do you make a day? What's your sales on average? And she said, you know, sometimes I come in a whole day, even sometimes a whole week. I don't sell even more than 500,000 leons, and I pay 30,000 from where I stay to get to PZ. 30,000 leons on transportation, and she's there on a daily basis and maybe for 2 or 3 days without any sales. And I said, so what do? You have children or grandchildren or? And he said, Mama, now manage no more, they manage, now God no more, they help we. So somebody like that, what would be happening to her now? Those are the people we are speaking on behalf of.
Right. Absolutely. You know, as you say that, I mean, Kyle, in your precursory remark, you mentioned the issue of government really not being caring or to look after the welfare of, the people of Sierra Leone. But, if we go by Sierra Leone's status, should I say, geopolitically, Sierra Leone cannot influence any of these external factors, unfortunately. These external factors that determine perhaps the prices of some commodities. I don't know. We have some people who go to the markets every now and then to check prices. They've not come back to us with the new set of prices for how much a bag of rice is at this point. It's quite interesting. So with all of those sad realities, no, government bears the burden. Government is the head that carries the crown. But with the realities across the globe, should we really just look at government and say, you know what, this is a moment for us to score political goals? The government is very, the government is inept, the government is not competent, cannot actually do the job for which Sierra Leoneans, give them. So is this actually the reality? Do we just want to punch them because, opportunity, is here?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, we are not just here to criticize government. It is our responsibility as opposition to also provide solutions as to when things do not seem to be going correctly. You know, I have noted a few points. Before asking your question, let me make this abundantly clear that you've allocated more time to Imran and that in fact we are to be given equal time.
I'm the only one who
Yeah, so that Imran will not have the advantage of continuing to mislead our people. You know, he said.
So because I enjoy the time game,
Yeah.
I always have a stopwatch.
Okay.
So I don't allocate more time. Go ahead.
Okay. Imran did say people must not be complaining about the bloated wage bill.
Right.
I remember when President Bio was campaigning, he was seriously
I did not
lambasting.
say so.
No,
Point
but
of
that-
correction.
he gave justification.
I did not say so. I'm here, alive and well.
Okay,
let me restate
take
my
note, you
position.
respond, you have the opportunity
No, but I
to
did not.
respond
So you're misinforming.
Take
Right.
note, you have the
That's not what I
responsibility to
said.
respond later, please.
Go ahead.
I did not say
I
so.
am certain you have a pen
Go ahead,
and a
Mikael.
book with you. Take note, please. I was taking note. You are justifying the bloated wage bill, yeah? President Bio was very much, aggressive in campaigning on that platform. That the APC was creating ministries unnecessarily. We were also even establishing diplomatic missions that were not required. So I was not expecting President Bio to have established other ministries or created other diplomatic missions. But when he came, he did just what he was criticizing, and that is also morally wrong. Let us just be clear. He was saying going back to history, and that in fact no one predicted COVID-19, no one predicted the Ukraine-Russia war. When laws are made, provisions are being made for unforeseen circumstances. Yeah. When you take a look at the Constitution of Sierra Leone, there is a provision in circumstances of crisis. What happens? Even to conduct presidential elections. When manifestos are being drawn up, they consider all of these things. The APC did not predict Ebola. We did not predict the twin shocks. We did not predict the financial crisis, global financial crisis in 2008. But we were able to do everything humanly possible to cushion the situation and maximize the welfare of the people. So we must have to note all of these things. He's telling me that he's telling this panel that government is subsidizing fuel.
Yeah.
But suffice it to say, Josie, who is the head of the government strategic communication unit, was all over the place. Even this afternoon, I was in McKinney, and Stalin Bangura did mention that he was all over the place saying government will not subsidize fuel. That in fact, if fuel is being subsidized, people from neighboring countries will come to Sierra Leone, say Liberia and Guinea, to purchase fuel, and that it will be smuggled out of Sierra Leone. So they will not subsidize fuel for our neighbors to benefit from that. So it is a news for Imran to sit here and tell us that government is subsidizing fuel as at this time, or since the
COVID broke out.
The COVID broke out. So that is a news to me. I want to state that we are witnessing the signs of a collapsed economy. One thing that is affecting the fuel price is the high exchange rate in terms of USD. And if that is not controlled, it will also be very difficult for us to actually control fuel price. Because these people, they purchase in USD when they go for their fuel. So they cannot compromise that. And when there's high exchange rate, high unemployment, we do not export, we don't produce anything as at now. The mining sector is actually being challenged. Fisheries is not doing well. In the end, we are fast approaching a moment of a collapsed economy.
From what you're saying, it appears, there's no hope for the economy as at now. So if you're saying all of these sectors, in fact, we should do.
These are the facts. We have to state them. The SLPP cannot handle the economy. They don't know what it takes. They don't have that particular knowledge to handle the economy of this country. And that is what is affecting us. Now, there is this problem of GST. We are double taxing our people. When the importers at custom, they pay. When importation is being done, they pay 15% GST. And now they're asking the retailers to also pay 15% when you go to purchase anything at a shop. Government is having a serious challenge with that. They cannot actually get what they want through that taxation. And so the result now is in fear. The banks are borrowing government. Government is borrowing money every other Thursday to be able to pay salaries. And because of that, they are increasing fuel so that the banks will have that collateral, that money will be flowing through fuel. Then they can borrow government. That is the harsh reality, I must state, and that is the fact. We must not
for the purpose of clarity, you're saying, the fuel price increase is for the benefit of government against the ordinary
Yes,
Sierra Leoneans.
that is a fact. Any economist can tell you that. that the banks are constrained in borrowing government. But when there is an increase in fuel, money will have to flow through the banks that is being generated from fuel. As a result of that, they will have the confidence, or that could be a collateral for them to be borrowing government money. Government is being economical with the truth. If we want a bailout, let us come to the public and say that. Maybe other people will intervene to help government in salvaging the situation. That is the problem.
Is this really the reality, or it goes back to the question of you trying to score political goals? Because you and I, as Sierra Leoneans, voted the SLPP as a government to come and look after us, to come and better the situation for us. But if you're now saying the SLPP, I mean, as a party and as a government, I mean, because it needs money, let the price go up on fuel. What should we get time for pay? But what are you saying?
We are all suffering. Yeah, I am traveling every other weekend to the provinces. Having fuel is a problem. Electricity is another problem. Yeah, I do put my phone on alarm just to wake up at 2 to be able to iron my cloth or the uniform of my kids. That is very challenging. Fuel is also contributing. When you have fuel, some people put on generator, even if EFSA is not giving them electricity. That is a challenge, and it is affecting every Sierra Leonean. So the APC will not use that as a political goal, because everyone is being affected. But we are also obliged to stating the fact that so that we can put government on its toes to be able to do that which is right, to maximize the welfare of the people. Now, you may want to ask the question, why the double taxation if government is not intending to generate income to be able to support its activities and paying salaries, especially paying salaries? Sierra Leone is not the only country that is being affected, I agree. One may want to say it is a global crisis, I agree. But is this happening for the first time in the history of this country? No. There had never been a situation in this country in which government cannot support its own activity to the extent that the country's economy wants to go into a collapse state. Not up until this moment that we are currently witnessing. So we are not here to score political goals or make statements just to satisfy people. If I am scoring political goals, I don't think Lawyer Sengeya may want to score political goals. I don't think Valnora Edwin sitting there may want to score political goals. Because when we are in governance, these are the same people that we are putting us on our toes. They were in fact bashing the APC more than what they are currently doing. They are just being patriotic. And let me state that I am not here to pray for President Bio, the SLPP, to fail. That is being very unpatriotic. I will not pray for that. But I just want the people to know that the APC is a better alternative.
campaign period would come. Don't worry. Would come with those big moments. I don't know, but for now, I think I would have to send an invoice for campaigning on my platform. But Imran, I mean, it's serious. So if the opposition feels you've failed, you've taken the people of this country for granted, you've made promises you've not fulfilled, and at the end of the day, instead of taking us to paradise, we are living in hell. Is that anything to go by?
You know, how I wish that this conversation was happening between three people without necessarily including the APC.
Oh.
How I wish.
Go ahead.
Because you begin to see the political slant, trying to get political mileage, right, for whatever reasons. Elections will come, and we'll all have an opportunity to make a case to the people of this country. And the people will have, and the people of this country will have,
elections are out.
And the people of this country will have that opportunity to re-elect President Julius Maada Bio again for a second term. Yeah, so don't, let's wait for that time to come. I would like to also restate a few things because he's misrepresenting me. I did not put up an argument for bloated wage bill. I am saying, and this has always been my point, I am yet to see, supported by data and statistics, this counter narrative that bloated wage bill has to do with political appointees. Government appoints people, but that's easy to say. Supported with data and statistics. We're all educated here. At least Miguel Waske, I can boast of him. Maybe not much more. Not past Waske. Right? Where's the evidence? Where's the data? Where's the statistics? Samuel, do us a favor. Challenge someone here to produce that data and statistics, which says that this bloated wage bill has to do with political appointees, full stop. It should be supported by evidence. But until then, let us put it to rest and urge someone to go and do the necessary research. Let us come back and have this conversation, number one. Second, I have also said, and we continue to talk about the need to add new ministries or new departments and agencies of government. If you go back in time, and there's historical evidence to that. This is not just me saying it, historical evidence. Go back in time. The number of ministries they had at the inception of this state called Sierra Leone in 1967 was literally about 4, 5, or 6. Here we are talking about in excess of 10, 15, or something like that. That is because each government has found the need to move in directions befitting what our aspirations are for a 21st century Sierra Leone, right? And look, I see nothing wrong in having big aspirations and big ambitions, right, as to where this country ought to be, right, in the next 5, 6, 7 years. And so for me, I think this is where we want to be. We have made a few additions. His Excellency the President has done so, as provided for by the Constitution of the Republic, and the people would ultimately make that determination in 2023. Coming back to the fuel thing, right, and this allusion that they don't add GST and all that. Look, someone once said, something has to be fundamentally wrong with you if you are to always roll your eyes and shrug your shoulders at every single thing. And that's the position of APC, unfortunately. So for every one of them you see who come out to talk to represent their party, for them, in fact, everything is fundamentally wrong, right? Forgetting. And that is why I refuse to take lectures from them. I'd rather have this conversation with Valnora and Mara rather than with someone from APC, because they failed this country woefully, and they were voted out in 2018, woefully. They left us in a state of austerity, right? Corrupted the state's monies and everything, right? For which some of these monies have been paid back. And we know they are a fundamentally corrupt political party, full stop, yeah? So let us have an honest conversation. I would like to have a conversation based on issues, yeah? How we address them going forward. If you think we are doing something that, in your opinion, you see differently, fine, yeah? But government ultimately has a responsibility. And on fuel, GST, I was talking about GST. GST, interestingly enough, started in 2009.
Yeah.
In 2009. So he's misinforming the public again, yeah? Started in 2009. The only thing that NRA is trying to do now is to put these electronic machines, yeah? But people have already been paying GST. Now, look, I understand the reluctance of people, right? Without necessarily agreeing with them. Because they don't use for far too long. This is one of those areas, those gray areas and shady areas in this country economy. People are used for pay taxes, full stop. So you'd rather pay some tax and you get the other one where you go and go ask for things and they'll say to you, oh, you want the all get GST receipt or you don't want the all get GST receipt. So, you know, and that should not be happening in any real country. I mean, we've all had the experience, all of us here, traveling abroad. Nobody know to go ask you whether you want receipt behind counter or the one where they call. You go to every single shop and you have to pay. Right. And on your receipts, it shows that. So why misinform the public and create the impression as if this GST has only been introduced? It was way back in 2009. They're just saying, okay, have the machines. Technology.
Let's done it electronically.
Have the machines. Okay. It's in your shop.
Let me ask you this.
And they have those threshold. It's been explained to them. But interestingly enough, Samuel, you and I are the ones who actually go to the shops to buy.
Right.
No, so, sir?
And we're the ones who pay.
But why not we suppose for the allies? Hey, no, the machine, they don't forget and then shop them. Why should it be them selling?
That is clear. But let me ask you this question.
It looks very suspicious.
Let me ask you this question now, Imran. What is being done? What's the problem? Why do we still have, this seeming fuel crisis when the authority in charge is saying we have enough fuel, even at 15,000 units? Outlets are not selling. You go to some stations, you see, vehicles queuing and they still not having fuel. What's the problem? What is government doing at this point?
So, yesterday was Saturday, right? And the day before was Friday. On those 2 days, I was actually out and about with Balwa Koma and his staff. They were moving from petrol station to petrol station because after the new price was announced, the suspicion is that some stations were actually hoarding fuel, full stop. So he was out and about in Western area. They have their deep, they go there, make sure that they deep, if fuel there, then give instructions quite clearly to sell. And I did witness, so I'm not being told, right? I did witness instances where those petrol stations had fuel and somehow were refusing to sell. And it comes against the backdrop of a press release I did see from petrol sellers, so those fuel stations.
Right.
Now, my understanding is that they actually have an issue with the oil importers, in a sense. And this is something that Edmond alluded to. Edmond Abu, no say all my dip and this fuel business for the longest time. That they have an issue with the oil importers. Now, the oil importers have a relationship with some of the petrol dealers, as in direct relationship.
Yeah.
And for the private dealers, it is more of a loose kind of relationship. And so somehow, when they were having this conversation with government, through PRA and the ministry, they were left out of it. And so they sort of felt dissatisfied, you know, but I spoke to Balo Akoma, the executive chairman, and he said to me, yes, he's going to meet them within the shortest possible time. In the interim, he was also trying to address this reluctance by some petrol stations to actually sell. So he was out and about, and I actually joined him because I wanted to see exactly what was happening. So we know that through the press release, and more fuel has actually come into the country, that there is sufficient fuel in town, and that there should be no reason as to why petrol stations should not sell fuel. That is authoritative. You can take that to the bank. That is not to also say that some petrol stations are still reluctant, and that is why you have PRA staff going about to make sure that a new price has been announced. People ought to sell fuel, and that is what should happen.
Consequences are not announced. I mean, for people who are actually holding.
No, they are not.
I mean, even
you
here,
know, yeah.
Fuel stations, I pass Lioko,
Yeah.
Total,
They're not.
NP.
The queues are still there.
So I mean, I appreciate the feedback. It's very useful information.
Yeah.
What I'll be doing after this show is to make sure I get onto Balwa and let him know that certain fuel stations, specifically if I can get those exact stations, so that they'll make it a point of duty first thing Monday morning to go there and do their deed. I also know that we have petrol dealers who have been fined in the past, so it is within the realms of PRA to institute punishment if they are found to not to be selling and they have fuel in their storage.
All right. Yes, you can jump in quickly before
I think you know, I do not quite enjoy the toing and froing between political parties, because I mean, as always, I always say as I mean, the difference between activists and politicians. For us activists, the intention is to ensure that we activate change. So when we raise these issues, it's not to bash government, it's not to get government out of the seat of power.
And that's why I enjoy the conversation with you.
To engage government to tell us. Say, for example, increase from 12 to 15,000. Would sale unions have access? Would there be sufficient fuel, even at 15,000? Would they? Right? Yeah. That's one. What is happening with the electricity crisis, for example?
Okay, yes.
Yes,
I'll
that is also
that
fundamental. Yes,
so
that's
something I wanted to tell you that you should ask, so he can. We need to talk about that.
So yeah,
well.
I think it's okay. It's okay to have this. Yes, it's okay to have these conversations. But I want to walk away from this podium knowing fully that I've been informed by the government strategic communicator that steps are being put in place, and these are not just cosmetics. When or in the next 2 weeks, etc. What is concrete that would address these issues going forward? Because in 2018, remember this regime inherited car power ship, etc., etc., and we have these issues recurring over time. We have Bumbuna. There's nothing being said about Bumbuna, whether it's a drop now, what sort of mechanisms. I read your manifesto, and they were talking about all these thermal plants to ensure that there is always alternatives. So if there's any problem with car power ship in terms of maintenance, I know this O&M would occur over time, but there should always be backup. Right? So that the people are not left in the dark. And that is why I say, for example, as activists, we want to enjoy our lives, we want to enjoy our families, but we're not. I'm calling on Green Monday because I think, one, the increase and even the access, there's insufficient fuel products. That's one. Electricity, the blackouts, widespread nowadays. And when you have these two issues combined, it means that the hardship is multiplied, quadrupled, if not quintupled.
I want to jump in. I don't know if you want
no,
him to
you can quickly jump in before Imran.
The point I would like, I know you're the one asking the question,
Go
but
ahead.
we want to know the long-term plan. As I mentioned, if this war continues for the next 3 months, or the next 6 months, or in fact, when you listen to the analysis, the solution seems a long way off as we speak at this point in time. So what's the cushioning effect that the government intends to put in place in terms of availability of fuel and in terms of the price? And then secondly, the electricity issue. This is something we've been having since the previous government over and over again.
All right. So Imran, you can jump in. You can
yes, okay. Thank you very much, Valnora. Number one, I think it is useful to note that even at the height of COVID, we had fuel in Sierra Leone. Even at the height. You might have another discussion altogether, as we often like to get, on the price, as always, right? But there was fuel consistently over during COVID, even at the height. That was because this government put together an economic program that we refer to as the Quick Action Economic Response Program, which was essentially to make sure that we did not run out of stock with our essential commodities. So that was rice, that was fuel, and everything else through tax cancellation, tax deferment, or tax reduction, making sure that there was about 500 billion at the central bank that businesses can have access to be able to get the necessary foreign exchange. So this is something I think I am going to assure the public, right, and you all here, that we will stop at nothing in ensuring that there's always fuel in this country. Right? We know that there are hiccups now, right, but we can assure the public also that there's enough fuel in Sierra Leone right now, and that there's more on its way, if they haven't already arrived via APP. And this will be, I mean, a thing of the past in terms of access to fuel. Okay. Because, I mean, it's quite true, and to your point, that Sierra Leoneans deserve to get to a gas station and have access to fuel. And that's a commitment we have made for the longest time, since April, and that is something we have done. So these are unusual times, but definitely we'll get back to some form of normalcy. On electricity, I spoke to the public relations young man at EDSA and the ministry. And this is just, well, let me just give my personal observation before I just state what he said to me. Last week was difficult with electricity supply, even in my area. But then in the last few days, I have noticed some improvement, meaning last week it went on and off, very irregular, and would go for long periods. And usually it would come at around 3 o'clock in the morning. You will have it till around 6, 7. But EDSA did put out a press release saying they had technical problems with the car power ship, and that the parts were in country a few days after, and that once those parts were fixed, we would get back to normalcy when it comes to electricity supply. So my own personal observation now in my area is that it has improved gradually. Now, what EDSA has asked me to pass on to the public is that by the end of this week coming, we would get some form of normalcy. So meaning parts are in town, they are being fixed, and things will get back to normal. But let me take your mind back. I'm sure you had a conversation at a certain point with Alhaji Kanjesise.
Yes.
Right here. And he did take you through what were his successes, challenges, and all the rest of it. And I remember him saying we had 2 sources, and that is for Western area, and that was Bumbuna, and during the dries we have to rely on the car power ship.
Right.
I think not to get lost in this current moment, it is also useful to note what this government has done in 4 years with regards to electricity supply across the country. So we're not just talking about Western area, right? And that should be the happy meal in this conversation. We're doing the electrification of 6 districts across the country, districts that haven't had electricity in over 40 years. We should be celebrating for those people, because whilst we are in some kind of relative comfort here, we sit down and talk about blackout, they have not had it in 40 years. For almost half of we life, every single one per winner, they do not know what electricity is. But now, gradually, they're getting to a point where they would begin to see light and feel light, right? And that would be a remarkable improvement in their lives, right? In those districts, number one. Second, we also know that through the solar power scheme, we also know towns and villages are being lit up across the country. So overall, we can safely say as a government, and we feel satisfied that marginally, remarkably, right, we have seen a seismic shift in electricity distribution across the country. That cannot be denied. So yes, we understand that Western area has its own challenges right now, but those challenges in the next week or two will be sorted out and we will get back to normalcy.
All right. I'm going to allow you to quickly have a bite on the issue of electricity. Mikhailo.
Yes, but I am going to have a bite on the issue of electricity, but you also have to understand that I'm here to represent the APC. So when statements are being made that is directly affecting my party, I have the responsibility to give an alternative
Go ahead.
to the people. Now, Imran started with indicating the statistics or referring to statistics that he may want to see someone coming up with statistics regarding employment or a political appointment, if that is what is actually leading to a bloated wage bill.
Right.
I want to put it to Imran that all political appointments and recruitment are based on, they are politically, regionally, and tribally motivated in this country. Since 2018 to date, even including NEC, an institution that is meant to be very apolitical. All political appointments and recruitment are politically motivated.
Politics talking on God, not about the business.
No, that is it. Let me just state the fact. So it is no news.
Samuel,
we
will continue conversation after I lay down.
That the wage bill is not being bloated based on political appointment, but even recruitment. Jobs are being created for people just to compensate them because they belong to a certain political party.
Okay.
Let us state that clearly. APC failed the people woefully hard. The people are crying for the APC because they enjoy the APC government of Ernest by Kurma.
So why were you booted out?
It is possible. People may want to have an alternative government to also assess.
Go ahead.
The APC is not the only major political party in this country. The SNPP is one of the major political parties. They have also contributed to the growth of this country. So when it is electoral period, people may want to have a taste of different government just so that they can assess. But if the people are to vote today, they will bring in the APC back. So we did not fail the people.
I like
now, he also said, I am here misinforming the public on GST. I am aware, Imran, that GST was introduced in 2009.
And who was president?
No, you said I was here.
Who was president?
Ernest Bakroma was president.
Thank you.
They also allowed me to land. I was not interrupted.
Go ahead.
Now, GST was even accounting for about 27% to our national budget. The GST, the money that the APC was able to get from GST. So I am not against GST, let me state. I am not against it, but let me explain. And I want to restate my point, that we have double taxing our people. The importers do pay 15% of GST at custom when they import goods in this country. So when they pay this 15%, they will have the responsibility to sell to the final consumer or the retailer without taxing them, because they have accounted for the tax and they are going to put that on the price in selling their goods. But now we've seen a situation in which when importers pay 15% GST, then the retailers will also have to pay 15% GST. That is, they are double taxing the people, and that is why they strike. There was a strike action. Shops were closed in this country for about 2 days. They were striking against this particular double taxation. So it is not new. I am not misinforming the public. I am giving them the right information that they need to know. Yeah? Let me repeat that the taxation is a double taxation, Imran. So take that.
Quickly on
Imran did not answer the question that has got to do with subsidies to fuel. Where did he talk? He balanced and completely. He did not respond to that.
All right.
He told us here that government is subsidizing fuel. And I have told him that Josie, who is the head of the strategic communication unit, was all over the place saying that government cannot subsidize fuel in this country.
Go ahead on
Now,
the electricity.
Why did he fail to comment on that? Enough electricity. In fact, the president,
I'm going to do that in one.
the president of the Republic of Sierra Leone, on the 18th May 2021 at 10 a.m. on the state opening of Parliament, he did state that we are now generating sufficient electricity.
Right.
This is it, in Freetown. And here is a situation we are witnessing perpetual blackout. So where is the sufficient electricity? He was talking about not only Freetown, other districts. I came from McKinney just a few hours ago. I was there last night. I tried to, get food in one of the restaurants. They told me they are not reserving food. They are not preparing food because the refrigerator, cannot work. The electricity is not there anymore. Same can be said from Kenema. In fact, I was born and raised in Kenema. I do go there almost every other month to check on my mom. She's there. There's no electricity at all at the moment. He's telling me that 6 districts are on the pipeline to be electrified. We pray that he succeed. We only hope that will not be on the pipeline until we take over in 2023, June 24. Yeah? So I wish you all the best. But let me tell you, this government cannot give us the electricity that we want. In 2007, I was a student at Trabe College. In fact, at that time, we used candles to study. It is the same situation as we speak now. The SFPP cannot give the people of this country electricity.
All right.
When my Nkrumah came, he said in 100 days I was going to give you electricity, and there was light, which we sustained until 2018. So you have the responsibility to give us electricity without giving excuses.
All right.
You have the responsibility to subsidize fuel without giving excuses.
All right.
They were voted on a social contract. They gave us a manifesto, the People's Manifesto, New Direction. They were voted on that platform. Let them deliver and avoid complaining.
Okay. Quickly, before I just bring in our viewers, especially those on Facebook, Valora, you can quickly have a bite on that. Yes.
So the issue I wanted to mention about the power supply added to what he said. Again, we are taking baby steps, so we're going 4 steps forward and maybe 10 steps backward. I don't think, okay, it's good that there's a process of electrifying districts that had no power for the last 40 years. But I think for a country experiencing over 60 years independence, I don't think this should be a discussion. And what I've said over time, even for Freetown, the Western area, we should not be having a discussion about power cuts. It comes back to the question, what's the backup plan? If we're having the car power ship, there should be an alternative. If we're having Bumbuna, there should be an alternative. But all we hear, they'll tell you how many megawatts. Oh, these ones we are doing 60 megawatts. Now we are doing 80 megawatts. And I think what we hear is we need 1,000 megawatts. So we are still taking these baby steps and tapping ourselves on the back for doing all these tiny things that should not even be a discussion. So it comes back to know what's the missing link. Why can't we get electricity right? We had all these challenges. It seemed to have been sorted. We hear all these explanations, and then we go to ground zero. So what's the missing link? Why can't we have sustainable energy? Because if we're talking about the economy, if we're talking about investors coming in, the building up the private sector, improving livelihoods, if we don't have sustainable energy, it's a problem. And can you imagine you're having this electricity issue and the fuel issue at the same time? At the same time. We need to be compensated. The government needs to compensate every citizen for the inconvenience. Water is another discussion. Water is another. So you can imagine water, electricity, fuel.
Yes, you would, but let me just quickly bring in our viewers. JP Anolta is saying, lack of commitments. These folks, SLPP, APC, have no viable ideas to manage the country. All these agenda for prosperity, agenda for change, power salon for better, is all crap. We are definitely not a poor country, but the leaders are not sincere and lack a progressive mindset. That's the missing link. Boma Francis is saying Sierra Leone government always fails because they are the biggest employer. In a capitalist state, private sector should be the biggest employer while the government collect taxes. Stephen Yale is saying, some man say BO don't make petroleum price don't go up globally. BO, you don't punish we self abroad. We are struggling with the price of fuel and other commodities. Interesting. Some of these so-called BK Kalon, can we just be respectful? Philip K. James is saying, for me, this is an irony. How can you buy a fuel at a particular price per barrel, put it at your own reserve, then when fuel goes up, it affects you immediately? Something is not going on well.
I know.
Cesar Cummins is saying, good evening, AYV. One of the main drivers of fuel prices is supply and demand. If there is an oversupply, as in there is more oil the market than people are consuming, this lowers the price right through to the pump. Conversely, if there is an undersupply in the market caused by increased demand, for example, prices are likely to rise. Petrol, diesel are priced according to the international benchmark, which is in the US dollars. That means that the strength of our local currency can affect petrol prices. That said, petrol prices can remain high even if the said dollar is strong. I'm going to take 5 more messages. Guys, you're going to forgive me. We have so many messages. Osman Kamara is saying the other underlying issue here regarding petroleum products is to do with the OPEC and its sister organization, OPEC Plus, of which Russia is a member. The set laws of the amount of barrels to be extracted from markets per day, meaning less barrels per day to reflect on the global market. The Baltic Sea is a battlefield for oil giants for decades. United Arab Emirates ready to produce more barrels to aid with demand, but alas, OPEC Plus group is not ready for it. Geopolitical crisis. Also remember, Iran is sanctioned from selling petroleum products. However, government must be robust with taking drift tax. Profits made by importers of such commodities when there is partial artificial scarcity and geopolitical scarcity. One of your guests is right. The price of a barrel is fluctuating. Also, we need a monitor petroleum product coming into our country, which is not Brent oil, good quality. Other products with lots of sulfur are not good for engines. Leaders take heed. Okay, Frederick Dumas, I'll tell Imran, but I'll not read it aloud. I'll tell Imran. Is it the same way he, okay. Ibrahim Ansari is saying the war in Ukraine has led to a reduction in GNP, increases in prices and interest rates, and a reduction in petroleum product supply, which drives price up. Samuel Casanova is saying in Europe there is no more cooking oil. All the stores are empty. Things are getting out of hands. Also, has there been efforts to revamp the petroleum fractional distillation we used to have at Kisi, or a new one to be relocated? Again, has there been any more plans to survey our petroleum beds in our Atlantic Ocean? As Fred is asking. Samuel, under whose regime did that economic boom happen? Eddie Grant is asking me. Eddie Grant, there was a time when Sierra Leone, we were saying it was, one of the fastest growing economy in the world. So that was an economic boom. Well, when the politicians were saying, we were rated as a nation. So right, Ibrahim Asare is in motorists here and in many of the petrol stations in Europe and America, major cities are spending hours waiting in the hope of filling up their tanks before fuel runs out. Politicians speak now, we laugh at them. Government needs to step up in this fuel crisis. The transportation most people spend is more than their salaries. There is an increase in inflation and corruption. Hope people know who they would vote for. All right? Hundreds of messages. Unfortunately, time will not permit me to go through all of them, guys. I am so sorry. But Ronald Georgetown is saying, the pot calling the kettle black. We've had 60 years and up to the present, there is a struggle in providing water and electricity. Indeed, these governments have been making progress, but they are merely baby steps which aren't making any meaningful difference. All right? I have to hold them down, guys. Forgive me. Forgive me. But so, as we round up as a way of just providing a reformatory way forward to some of the things we've talked about. I'm going to start off with you, Mara. Yeah. What should be done at this point, and how, again, I'm going to ask you about your Green Monday. But what should be done at this point, to just salvage the plight we're in? Because many people have always said, we continue to live in this monumental abject poverty, and we vote in people every now and then to see how they can take us out of that. But it appears we're not moving. We're still, we're just static. So how do we put ourselves in motion?
I think it's fundamentally sad because 4 or 5 years ago we had this very same conversation about water, electricity, and fuel. And here we are, still having this conversation.
In fact, it's now more
And
time for
somebody said that usually what we ask our politicians, our leaders, what we ask them to do is to be truthful to what they had promised.
Right.
Essentially, it's what we're asking a new direction regime to say. You laid out wonderful plans in your new direction manifesto in terms of how you would ensure that, for example, you spoke about oil refinery. We used to have that oil refinery base at Kisii. What is happening to that? Right? So once you ensure that you install all these structures, when these global events occur, they do not immediately affect you. There's always a protection domestically, but these protections are lacking. We don't talk about water anymore. It seems as if everybody has given up on solution to water, right? We don't talk about it. We're still struggling with electricity in terms of car power ship. My understanding was that car power ship was supposed to be some temporary measure, right? It was not going to be around for 4 years and servicing Freetown, for example. So when we have this conversation about home maintenance with car power ship, as if overnight it's been transformed into permanent solution, right? And then fuel. I think the pains we have usually is because we can sit here and then pontificate and use all the favorite lines politically to rationalize and the counter narrative from the opposition, etc., etc. But some of us who are activists, we come face to face with the realities of these omissions of leadership. We come face to face on a daily basis. We know those folks who find it difficult to eke out a living. We know those folks who have, have resorted to trekking nowadays. We hear the stories from the masses who are downtrodden. So what we really want from a government is to come forward to us and tell us what's a sustainable solution to these problems. It's not quick fixes overnight, just to suit and score political points or, equalize. Right. Is to ensure that for once we address the problems that the people face. Right? Because that's the duty of government. That's the duty of government. And that's what I've said about the Green Monday. Is to ensure that we come out, because normally government would think that everything is okay, the people can afford 15,000 loans, let's try to get access, let's try to get as much fuel products in town as possible. No, it's even more difficult for some people to purchase fuel, to purchase other social commodities which have been affected as a result.
Let me quickly ask this question and give you 40 seconds to just wrap up on that. The issue of the Green Monday, I want you to be clear with that, so that, we know we have many people who want to take advantage of the situation. So I want you to be clear with that, whether or not, you're calling for people to converge, or you're calling people, and secondly, I was just going through, somebody just screenshot an Instagram post by the First Lady about, as we talk about electricity, that, thieves vandalized the station at Guma Valley Hill Station, and of course that is ultimately going to even affect the water supply, because so with all of these, some of these things we put ourselves in as a people. How do we address things like that?
So quick response. Quickly, firstly, I've not called for any gathering, no assembly, no. I'm not calling for folks to converge anywhere. You don green, whether it's a green cap, a green scarf, a green pants, green t-shirt, whatever it is, and you go about your normal business. It's to register. And I've had many people who say, oh no, it's why are we done in green? I've said to them that green is a national color. It's a national color. It's not a political color at all. And secondly, it's not like, I'm calling for a rally or a demonstration where people would converge. No. Just don green. It could be a green symbol, whatever it is. It is to show, and communicate to government that the increases over time recently, have heightened the hardship on the people, and to communicate our dissatisfaction. And I hear this thing about vandalism here and there. firstly, I would say that leadership should ensure there's actual protection to these facilities. We know that the police are being misused over time. You would see that some police officers will be assigned to politicians. They go about doing nothing, carrying the bags of politicians. They are being misused. Meanwhile, there are facilities to protect. There are facilities to protect, right? So if we ensure that we protect these our priority areas, we would not have stories. Everywhere in the world, people do take advantage when there's a facility and there's no protection. I mean, thieves would have their day, right? It could also be, I mean, some unpatriotic act on the part of those people who are trying to sabotage government.
Right.
Quite clearly. So government does have the responsibility to ensure that they offer protection to these facilities.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, that's the duty to ensure that they protect these facilities and not come up with one story and one excuse after another. Okay. And that is what we're asking.
I mean, the APC shares your view, I mean, of the protest, but I don't know if they will be so glad to be in green.
No, I've spoken to them that it's a national color. It's not that they are going to don SNPP's color. Exactly. Color. It's a national color.
Valora, let me hear you on the issue, I mean, as to what should be done at this point to get things, I mean, to a path we all need it.
I think, firstly, it's rather unfortunate that we're still having conversation about the fundamentals. Because when we talk about the electricity supply, the water supply, these are just the basic, at a basic level, nothing exceptional. And we're still not getting it right. I was having this conversation with someone, and the individual was saying, I said, if you look at the manifesto, you look at the National Development Plan, there are steps to the solution. So why are we still having all these excuses and stories as to why we cannot really see some concrete achievements towards achieving the bigger goal? And the response was, well, this is politics. And I think that's the sort of politics we have to stop playing, because it's a social contract. So when you hear the argument that, oh, well, there are external things that happen and government is doing its best, but the best is not good enough. Because in your manifesto, in the National Development Plan, there were clear guidelines as to what we should have achieved at this point in time. And when we come in, it's just to draw attention to that. And that's why I'm asking, what's the missing link? Why are we having this conversation about water supply, electricity supply, fuel supply, which are just fundamentals? On the water supply and Guma, I've been to Guma Dam. And I think the media also needs to go there, do a video. I know they've done it, but do it again and have a conversation between Guma and Ministry of Lands. Ministry of Lands need to tell us, the public, why do they keep on selling land in water catchment areas? Why do they encourage this high-level deforestation, especially in the western area, knowing the impact it has on water supply? Because that's the problem of Guma. Not Guma as an institution not doing its job. Yeah, they have some challenges. But the bigger picture is, why does Ministry of Lands continue to sell land and continue to allow deforestation? Another thing is, in terms of what we want to achieve, we have a vision of being a middle-income economy, but I think we need to be guided by certain principles and certain values and have a standard. So saying we provide electricity, but the voltage is low, you have all this fluctuation, it's not providing efficient electricity. You're giving us water supply. Nobody drinks water from their tap, or most people do not. We used to do that. When you go to school, you had the street taps. That was the best thing you can do, to drink from the tap. But you can't do that now. It's such a risk. And we know what is happening with typhoid. But going forward, I think what government needs to do, in view of all these challenges, there has to be, we've said it, and we're saying it again as we close, there has to be some cushioning effect. There has to be some thinking around alternatives. When these global crises happen, within whether it's the Mano River Union, within ECOWAS, we have to start thinking, do we always need to rely on Europe and America? When they sneeze, we catch a cold, or we catch pneumonia, or catch TB. We need to be thinking bigger than we're thinking now. And I think those are the sort of sustainable, it might be long term, but the first step needs to start. These are the sort of sustainable measures as a country we need to
Appreciate it.
think around. And successive governments, the two political parties are represented here, and we believe governance is continuity. If one starts something, the other needs to build on it, because at the end you are serving the people of Sierra Leone.
All
It's
right.
Sierra Leone you're serving
Thank
as a nation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Minkailu, you have 2 minutes.
Let me hang on our lips. Governance is continuity. I agree 100%. The SLPP is constrained because they did not continue on the platform in which Ernest Baikroma left this country. Ernest did that when he took over from President Kaba. When they came, they terminated most of the contracts that we went into. One significant one was that with the Gerald group of companies, the SL Mining contract. They went to court. There was a legal battle. At the end of the day, it was resolved. But that affected the mining sector very seriously and discouraged a lot of potential investors who are intending to come invest in the mining sector. Yeah. So government, I agree, and governance is continuity. When the SL people have to hand over to us, we are not going to try to undo what the SLPP has done. That would be very wrong. Yeah. And I want to also comment on Green Monday. I would have loved to join the protest, but unfortunately I have problem with the green. I am aware that this is part of our plan, but if we were a protest on agriculture, food insufficiency, because green represents agriculture, so I was taught civic education in school. White symbolizes peace. If it was white that we are going to have a peaceful protest, or say blue because it has got to do with the natural harbor, our sea, and oil has got some nexus with the sea.
What about the green?
But the green has got no nexus. So as a result, I'm finding it very difficult. I want to commend him. He has been very resilient. Yeah. He has not changed his zest since the APC era.
Right.
He has been very consistent. And that is what we expect of civil society.
Right.
I don't expect civil society to be taking sides or compromise because a certain party they side with is in governance.
Okay.
That is very wrong. It is not in the interest of the country.
Thank
so I commend you, but I prefer to put on white.
Thank you, Minkailu. Quickly, 2 minutes, Imran.
Well, look, as I round up, I think I'm going to attempt to tie in some of the issues Valnora raised, and maybe fundamentally also disagree with her when she questions donor partners and begin to ask every time we say we have met international benchmarks, and we celebrate when we have donor support and donor funds. You know, Paul Kagame, one country. Because of his visionary leadership, he has partnered with all the international organizations that we have in Sierra Leone, but he has used it to move his country from a poor country to a middle-income country. So it takes vision, in addition to donor support and donor engagement, to move your country forward to another level. Ghana has also done so. So I see nothing wrong for us to continue to partner with IMF, World Bank, and all the rest of it. And it is for that reason that we have been able to secure the MCC Compact. What does that mean? It talks about binding constraints to some of the issues you raised, long-term, medium to long-term. How do we address them on things like water and electricity supply? That is what the MCC Compact is about, right? Binding constraints, making sure that the necessary cash injection that is needed to move those areas forward. Because ultimately, you know, your aspirations is pegged as against your revenue. Sierra Leone at the moment is doing 22% of its budget on education. And that in itself is big. We've almost doubled our commitment to healthcare. Right? That has gone from 5-6% in the previous administration to about 12% now. Donor engagement, probably if you add those, it takes it above that 11-12%. So I see nothing wrong, right, in having IMF and the World Bank, EU and all the rest of it, right, to continue to engage with them as we take the country forward. Right? For me, it's about honesty. Yeah? It's about making the right decisions, making sure that those investments are utilized, right, for the good of the people. And that is what we'll continue to do as a government. President Julius Maada Bio, under his tenure as President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, we have been able to do the electrification of 6 districts across the country. That project will end this year. And we have also done 60 townships right across the country, and they are now benefiting from solar light. So look, On electricity, hopefully in the next week or so, that will be a thing of the past.
All right.
And on fuel, look, we are where we are because of the global situation.
Okay.
This government will continue to take the necessary steps, and everything is on the table.
Thank you.
Right, in making sure
Thank you very
that
much.
those effects do
Thank
not
you very
become
much,
far
Imran
too much for the
Sila,
people of this
strategic
country.
communicator, the Ministry of Information and
Just
Communications.
very quickly, when I mentioned about the donor partnership, every government all over the world partners with donors. But for us, it's the extent, the conditions, and the fact that some of these partnerships, as I said, at the implementation stage for the ordinary Sierra Leonean, we are still yet to see the benefits of that. That's the angle I'm coming from.
Thank you very much, Valnoa Edwin, a good governance campaigner. Thank you very much, Lawyer Soisembe Mara, good governance and democracy advocate. Thank you very much, Minkailu Kuruma from the National Publicity Wing of the Oppositional People's Congress Party. It's been a pleasure talking to all four of you, gentlemen and lady. Thank you very much. In case you missed this edition, you have the opportunity to take a look at the repeat on Thursday at 10 p.m. here on AYV TV and radio. My name is Samuel Wise Bangoa. The show has been AYV on Sunday. And up next is the auditions of the Housemaid Saloon Season 3. Take care of yourself and good night.